I lied about eating cold pizza. I'm gonna watch this video first before anything cold pizzas. Top 10 myths about US presidents. We've been through Nixon's truth about his resignation from the presidency, how he was not impeached from Watergate. My mouse has disappeared. Let's plug that back in because I need that. Teddy Roosevelt's famous riding on a moose picture, which is one of the earliest Photoshop jobs ever done, and some others. And so now we're here for number 6. Let's get it. Play.
6. Zachary Taylor was poisoned to death. On July 9, 1850, President Zachary Taylor suddenly died from a mysterious illness. Rumors immediately began to swirl that he had been poisoned, with his wife, Margaret Peggy Taylor, as one of the prime suspects. Although some historians still debate the exact cause of death for number 12, we can safely rule out the First Lady as a suspect. Taylor, a career soldier in the hero of the Mexican-American War, reluctantly entered the political arena as the Whig Party's nominee. Although his views were seen as vague at best, he vehemently opposed slavery and saw preserving the Union as his primary objective. In the 1848 presidential election, the veteran fighter, nicknamed Old Rough and Ready, narrowly defeated Democrat Lewis Cass to become the first president to be elected without ever having previously served in public office. A few days before his death, Taylor attended
was in the military. Nobody cares.
Fundraising event for the Washington Monument, where he consumed an ample serving of raw fruit and iced milk. Soon after returning to the White House, he began feeling violently ill with a stomach ailment. At the time, cholera outbreaks were common, especially in the warm summer months in which the disease easily spread in Washington's open sewers. Unfortunately, Taylor's condition never improved, and he would eventually be diagnosed as having most likely suffered a bacterial infection of the small intestine, or possibly gastroenteritis. Although speculation circulated in some circles that pro-slavery Southerners may have carried out an assassination plot, no hard evidence ever surfaced. As for Taylor's widow, Peggy had already been in poor health by the time the couple arrived in Washington, and typically delegated most of her First Lady duties to her daughter, Mary Elizabeth.
Dude, back in the day, the president saving face and like the First Lady, basically the whole first family, them having a good face for the American people was of so much importance. And like the shift in the 21st century to like exposing everything, right? Whistleblowing. Post Watergate basically has just like flipped to the point of like almost anti-patriotism. And now they're just like, they want stats and figures, and we want to know every time you make a misstep. Exposing things that are not even supposed to be talked about from meetings and shit. It's crazy.
For most Republicans, mere mention of the 40th president invokes hushed reverence for a man known as the Jipper and for being a beacon of conservative ideals. But a closer examination of the facts reveals a cunning politician who frequently raised taxes to support federal programs, nearly tripled the national debt, and considered FDR one of his early idols. Not exactly talking points in the conservative media. Nonetheless, Reagan's complex legacy remains tilted heavily to the right. His fiscal policies, labeled Reaganomics or voodoo economics, his opponents touted a trickle-down effect to stimulate the economy based on lower income tax and reduced government regulations and spending, except for the military. Results were mixed. While GDP growth flourished, income disparity grew, as did homelessness, resulting from slashed federal programs for mental health and assistance to the poor. It's also worth noting
that that doesn't even make any sense mathematically. Like, it's not gonna trickle down. Like, that's not how business
Reagan
works.
spent most of his life as Democrat. The former actor, best known for his role as George the Jipper Jip in Nut Rock All-American, and who also once starred with a chimpanzee in Bedtime for Bonzo, got his first taste of power as a 5-term president of the Screen Actors Guild. He later switched sides shortly before making a successful gubernatorial bid in California, where he served 2 terms. The fervent wave of nostalgia may also be rooted in a desire for basic civility. Reagan, reflecting on his core Midwestern values, never disparaged his opponents, frequently reached across the aisle, and always upheld the dignity befitting the office of the presidency, a concept that's long gone today in the toxic political environments that exist. Regretfully, the Iran-Contra affair left behind an ugly stain in which the government sold arms to Iran, the bad guys, to help fund Nicaraguan rebels, the good guys to fight the Sandinistas, good and bad guys, all in an effort to raise money and rescue Americans in Lebanon.
That's a really good breakdown. I was like so ready to talk. He like killed that shit.
This all really did happen. In the end, however, none of that really matters because Rambo Iran ruled the 1980s, won the Cold War, and ended the Iran hostage crisis, even though Carter did most of the heavy lifting, but, well, that's another story. Number 4. JFK was groomed to be president. John F. Kennedy was born into a juggernaut political family as the son of wealthy businessman and politician Joseph Joe Kennedy and the equally well-connected Rose (née Fitzgerald) Kennedy. The handsome young man called Jack certainly looked the part and even married the perfect wife, Jackie, while living like royalty on their idyllic compound dubbed Camelot, which was actually in Massachusetts. However, Joe Kennedy Jr., JFK's older brother, had been originally anointed as the chosen one to become the first Roman Catholic president. Joe, the oldest of 9 Kennedy children, possessed the same good looks, the smarts, and the charm that ran deep in the family bloodline. He graduated from Harvard with honors in 1938 and studied abroad at the London School of Economics before enrolling at Harvard Law School. Naturally, the political arena beckoned. America's involvement in World War II would temporarily curtail those ambitions as Kennedy set his sights on becoming a naval aviator. After getting his wings, he eventually flew 25 combat missions in the European Theater of Operations, ETO, as a bomber pilot. Meanwhile, back home, the Kennedy clan eyed the 1946 Massachusetts Congressional District 11 seat for Joe to make his initial strides towards the White House. But first, the recently promoted Lieutenant Kennedy accepted one last assignment before rotating stateside. The dangerous mission involved deliberately crashing a modified B-24 loaded with munitions inside enemy territory. Codenamed Operation Aphrodite, Kennedy was tasked with setting the course before parachuting to safety. However, the explosives detonated prematurely, killing him instantly. Kennedy's remains were never found. For his actions on August 12, 1944, he was posthumously awarded the Navy Cross.
How did I never hear about that? That's
the tragic
incredible.
event would become the first of many to befall the Kennedy family. Joe later received a commemorative headstone at Arlington National Cemetery.
I've seen the headstone. I never knew the story.
Joined by his brothers, John and Robert. Number 3. Taft got stuck in a bathtub.
Dude, I'm so sad. I thought that was
Taft
true.
was a large man,
He
weighing
was
a
huge.
robust 340 pounds.
Yeah.
He easily holds the record for the heaviest US president to date. Although portly caricatures dominated political cartoons of the day, the story about Taft getting stuck in a bathtub and having to be extracted by 6 men is pure fiction. America's hefty head of state did, in fact, have an oversized bathtub installed in the White House during his 4 years at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But having a big boy tub would have made it far less likely for him to be trapped like a wet, blubbery walrus at the zoo. Fat jokes aside, the apocryphal fable continues to persist. The account is attributed to Ike Hoover, a White House butler and usher, whose 1934 memoir, 42 Years in the White House, contains a small anecdote in which Taft would stick in the tub while bathing. And that's all there is to the rumor. There are no other credible details around.
Are you
Furthermore,
serious?
the notoriously reticent Taft did not have a friendly relationship with the press, who would have been merciless had the whale tale ever leaked. Fortunately for Taft, his legacy includes being the only president to serve as a Chief Justice and began the grand tradition of the president throwing out the ceremonial pitch on Major League Baseball's opening day. So, well, go number 27. Number 2. George Washington had wooden teeth.
Oh yeah, that's
Wearing
fucking
dentures
bullshit.
is one of the many dreaded predations associated with aging, whether stemming from poor dental hygiene, genetics, or just one too many barroom brawls. Tooth loss occurs even to presidents. Although orthodontia has come a long way since the 1700s, George Washington's chompers were certainly not made from lumber. A full set of
that's
George
fucking
Washington's
dumb.
false teeth can be found in the permanent collection at Mount Vernon, the site of his ancestral estate in northern Virginia. Unfortunately, painful dental problems troubled the Revolutionary War hero and future president throughout his life. As a result, he wore several sets of dentures made from various materials such as ivory, gold, and lead, and they were held together by uncomfortable metal wires. Ouch. The myth undoubtedly grew over time when visitors to Mount Vernon noticed that one of his ivory sets appeared stained and wooden-looking. The yellowing discoloration is completely natural, even though an adoring public much prefers the image of Washington crossing the Delaware sporting pearly whites. Number 1. Washington and that cherry tree. When you're the father of a country, it's not exactly surprising that there's more than one myth clinging to the man. And as this fable goes, a young George Washington once cut down a cherry tree on the family farm near Fredericksburg, Virginia. When later confronted by his father, Augustine, the lad replied, I can't tell a lie, Pa. You know, I can't tell a lie. I did cut it with my hatchet. Sure, it's a swell little folktale, but it's phonier than a $3 bill. Washington's first biographer, Mason Locke Weems, concocted the yarn shortly after his subject's death in 1799. Weems, a traveling book salesman and ordained Episcopal minister, felt obliged to exalt the fallen leader by using the story to symbolize Washington's honesty and integrity. Published in 1800, The Life of Washington provides an effusive, veracity-challenged account of Washington's charmed life. Not surprisingly, the book became an immediate bestseller, even though the passage about the cherry tree didn't appear until the 5th edition 6 years later. Wow. Analyzing the case from a CSI lens, well, here's what we know for sure. Location, Fredericksburg, Virginia. The victim, a mature cherry tree. The suspect, Washington George, 6-year-old male, Caucasian, approximately 3'9", 45 pounds. The weapon, a small blade. Clearly, the facts, they don't add up. So, unless the still wet behind the ears first grader secretly possessed some kind of Paul Bunyan superhuman lumberjack strength, it's fairly unlikely, if not damn near impossible, that a little boy in knickers could have chopped down that timber with his pocket knife.
That's what, yeah. No, he didn't chop down a cherry tree. The funny story about the I can't tell a lie is when I was a child, that was in a book that my parents used to read me before I went to bed, like 6 or 7. And they didn't tell me till I was like 8 or 9 that it is physically impossible for people to not lie. Like, all people have lied before, even if they're like little white lies or great big fabric stories. I thought George Washington had never told a lie until I was like 7 or 8 years old. I didn't know, and they told me, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. I thought he was just some big mythical being, and then they've already destroyed the imagery of George Washington for me since I was young. But I'll see you guys in the next one. ChavezzSlovakia. Peace.